Well, with that, when people were done laughing, Boris got up and he said, I've got to go. This has really been fun. Uh, I hope I've helped. Uh, the got quite a mystery here, if I understand you, and if you don't have it solved next Friday or Saturday when I'm here, maybe I can help some more. I don't know. But anyway, he got up and he could hear, and they could too, that the rain had stopped. It had been a very hard rain, but it had not been very long at all, which was not that good. But it made it easier to go out when he went out. Now Boris didn't just leave. He was really an amazing gentleman, as amazing as a gentleman as he was amazing as a ruffian, sort of, the Saturday before. And he went around pretty much to everybody and shook their hands and thanked them. And when he got to Duke, he said that was pretty smart to figure out about that clinching. I'm sure you're right about that. And well, Duke was he was still a little uneasy, but he was flattered. He was a little proud that he'd come up with that. Now there's a language among men, maybe among women too. I don't know. I think it would be different, where you can insult somebody if you trust them. It's not aggression. It's actually a sort of affection if you dare to insult them. And Duke, for his part, you need to understand that to understand this exchange that happened. Duke, he said, well, I'm not as stupid as I look. And that was sort of part of that language. to which Boris said, well, that's a mercy. And at that, that was that language. And, in a way, was it early enough to use it? Duke was kind of taken aback by that. I don't know if you understand this subtlety, but it's kind of a man thing. And but then Boris smiled. It was a smile. Boris hadn't smiled like that in probably years. He was such a happier man than he'd been a week before. And his smile was infectious. And he put his hand out, and Duke shook his hand, and they both smiled. And then Boris was headed toward the door. But there was one more stop he made. He went over to Barbara. And remember that lady that was well into her 90s there? And he spoke to her. And he said, well, good night to you, Mrs. Oscarson, isn't it? I don't know how he managed to know her last name. And I'm glad you came, or whatever he was saying. And she said, well, thank you, and good night to you. And Boris said, what do you got going on here? Because there was a kind of people sitting around her, and Barbara said, you remember her language wasn't that good because of that stroke she'd had, and her youngest daughter Barbie was helping, and she said, well, we're talking about the book Islandia. And at which Boris lit up and he said, Islandia? I've read that book. That's a great book. I read it in high school. I did a book report on it. I got an A. and Barbara was surprised, and she said through Barbie, how did you know about that? And Boris said, well, we had a really great English teacher, and he knew about my interest in horses and farms and the country, and he recommended it to me, and he was right. Everyone ought to read that book. Well, anyway, with that, he headed out the door. He had made excuses in a way that he hadn't made really excuses, but he said he really had to go. The truth was, which he didn't say, was he wanted to get home before his wife, Charlene, opened up still another bottle of wild turkey.